Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our channel. And today I have Shireen Abdi, a senior associate lawyer at AP Lawyers, joining me to talk about this very important topic about understanding marriage contracts and whether or not you need one. It is a very important topic for people that are considering getting married or living together. And it's interesting because before we got on camera, Shireen had made a comment, don't we have like 500 videos on marriage contract? And I'm like, yep, I have a feeling this is one that we're going to get to 1,000 videos on, and it would still not be enough to get the message across. I'm very passionate about this. I am passionate about every area of family law, but with a lot of times I find with the law, it's not very proactive. We're reacting to things. So people have separated. Now we have to deal with the fallout. We're dealing with the fallout of things. Marriage contracts is the one time where people can actually take control and decide how they want things to play out. So I am extra passionate about people, getting one done. Well, that was a question, then you already know where I stand on it. So should you have one? I guess my answer is yes. But I'm gonna reel it in and have Shireen get started. So what is even a marriage contract if the name wasn't self-explanatory, Shireen?
A marriage contract, as most people are aware of it, is what they call prenuptial agreements. And because that's famously known, especially in North America, in any sense, a marriage contract is essentially a contract between you and your potential partner or actual spouse, because the marriage contract can be entered into even within your marriage. That outlines any host of issues that you guys wish to deal with, including your spousal support issues, property division, and any estate rights that you guys wish, business structures. Honestly, anything that you need to define within your relationship with respect to property rights and support rights can all be outlined in a marriage contract.
Let's jump into the marriage contract itself and what is maybe sort of the benefits, because clearly I said a person should have one. So let's kind of go through the benefits of having one. It's an opportunity for you to set the terms of what you want to happen rather than having the default, right? What shocks me now is the number of times people are unaware of the consequences of getting married. Like it's like it can't really be this shocking. Like, should the government like be putting out ads about this thing? Like, I don't know. What has
No,
been your experience?
No, absolutely. Like I actually spoke to someone just last week, and he didn't understand that the property that he was bringing into the marriage is going to be something that's going to be shared. And that was very shocking because a lot of people, and this is a common misconception I get, is that people think that the property they're bringing into the marriage will absolutely never be touched by the other spouse. And that is absolutely not true. There are mechanisms to maybe deduct some portion of it, depending on the nature of what we're looking at. But if you want that absolute protection, that's why a marriage contract exists. Including, I think the most notable issue I have is when you share property with, your siblings or your parents, and maybe you're on title for purposes that you were just maybe for financing purposes. There's no real beneficial interest in the property, but just you actually hold title. But they don't
Mhm.
realize that that can actually impact what happened to that property as a result of a breakdown of the relationship. So making
Mhm.
sure those unintended consequences don't occur is very important. I've seen them years down after the fact where, they've sworn up and down that their spouse would never do that to them. And, they knew that the property didn't belong to them, but they would not make a claim. And then we're now having to deal with very complex issues just on something that could have been very simply outlined. If that's the
Yeah.
intention, then that's how it should be phrased, especially when you're on title to a property or you have interest with other people, like a business. You were telling me about an example of that, if a partnership that you recently dealt with.
Yes, no, I know. I think what was concerning for me in that case is that my client that owned the business had to give this extensive disclosure, and the partners weren't thrilled by it. The partners didn't want to. I mean, when you form a partnership, everyone has various responsibilities, and the partners that were in charge of the financial parts of the business didn't want to produce certain disclosure. It made my client look bad. And, obviously the partners were upset. It was just an uncomfortable situation all around because they didn't want to have their finances open to the world to see in that sense. So again, if there was a marriage contract that excluded, that business, or even if not assets in general, if you can, because you can make it as broad or as specific as you want to be. So if you own a business that involves other people or a corporation you're trying to, do big things with, it's okay for you to just have that contract that protects you. And it might not just be about trying to avoid the other person getting the monetary benefit. It's also saving the other people that were not involved in this conflict, saving them from having to deal with, the fallout of your relationship as well. So that's a concern. And even in terms of that as well, now even receiving the disclosure and looking into it, um, it raises concerns because with equalization for my client, for example, he may need to pay out he may need to pay out he may need to pay out a large equalization payment that would now require him to maybe sell his interest in the partnership. That's raising a concern for the partners as well, because they're thinking, well, we can't afford to buy out your interest. This is not, when things are amicable and you don't need cash, you can agree among partners to a payment structure over time and things like that. But if cash is needed right now to make an equalization payment, the partners are upset because they're exposed to a situation where a third party might have to come into this business that they never, it's not what they wanted. It wasn't the vision they had for the company. So that again is one example of why you should get a marriage contract.
Absolutely. And that's a very specific example, but oddly it happens, and it's not just that it impacts two people, it can impact a whole host of other people. And that's
You've
the
had scenarios, Serena, and which you kind of touched on a bit earlier, where it involves parents. That's one we see a lot. I just got off a consult about, 20 minutes ago, and it's the same thing. Son has a, in this case, it's son having a home, mom's on title for just for mortgage purposes, I guess. But now dad wants to share in that property, and son's trying to retain us to become to represent him to make sure that his interests are protected. So things like that, right?
Absolutely. And even in situations where someone's not on title. So let's say you're living in your family's property, those might and those might bring about a claim from the occupying spouse that you didn't intend. And neither, I'm sure, that the third parties intended. So if your intention is to always ensure that the property is protected, you want that to be reflected in your agreement. And we cannot stress this enough, but it happens too often. People are too trusting in that. We also hope that things always work out and you don't have to go through a breakdown, but you always want to protect yourself just in that sense. And I think Angela uses an expression all the time about, life insurance. Well, you don't want to be in a car accident. You want to ensure that you're able to deal with the the unfortunate event that happens, that you're protected. So you get life insurance with that mindset. It's the same that should apply for marriage contracts. And I think a lot of the time is, there's might be specific property you wish to address, and there might be other issues you never thought of, that, family trusts, for example, or inherited property that you're bringing into the marriage, what the consequences of doing like something like that, what the automatic rules and entitlements would allow the other spouse upon marriage being. So just making a very clear, defined path so that there's no, I wouldn't say misconceptions, but more so there's just no disagreement as to how things would be divided upon your separation. And I think Angela and I can agree that it makes things a lot more friendly. Or a lot more amicable, I should say, and the least contentious, especially if you end up having children and you're not having to, make that big blowout that, is certainly not in the best interest of the children as well.
Just speak to a family law lawyer, like really. I met a wonderful, like very smart, ambitious lady last week, and it had to do with, the home. She had a home. She had brought this home into well, no, she didn't have the home before they got married. They were living together. She decides to buy a home, all of the assets provided by her, the down payment, I should say, provided by her, closing costs, everything. But again, as people usually do when in a relationship, she puts the home in both names. Fast forward to about, I'll say about 10 years later, relationship isn't going great. I don't know where she got the advice from that if she sold that home and bought a home in her name only, that the other party couldn't touch it. And that is one major misconception. People think that, it's in my name, this isn't the house is in my name and the car is in my name. And so it just makes it immune from sharing. But that wasn't true. And I had to be the person to give that unfortunate bad news that it doesn't matter that the home is in, your name only. There is going to be equalization. Whatever the value of that home is on the date of separation, you will share it. And unfortunately, it's now still a matrimonial home. So everything you've now put into it, you're not going to be able to deduct, subject to whatever unconscionability arguments or whatever else we can make right there. But if there was a marriage contract, at any point she wouldn't have had to sell that home, for example, right? That move wasn't, it was done from just a purely strategic perspective. That would not have been necessary. They could have stayed in the home they had and done a marriage contract that would have outlined, made it very clear that this is what she wanted. And Shirin, as you had said, people are so trusted in this scenario. She didn't do anything underhanded, by the way. It was very clear, like, her husband knew that this is what she was doing. She wanted to just move, have a fresh start, have a home in her name only, so that if anything were to happen, it would be hers. He 100% agreed with her, was on board with it. Until now, this is 6 years after, he's not. And there's really nothing. The default of the law does not serve her in this scenario. So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
And I think the common thing is a lot of people are like, well, I don't have any property, or marriage contracts are for people who are rich and, have things. It's not about that. Yes, there are maybe third party consequences that could happen. And even if you come into the marriage without property, if the understanding is that you want to purchase a home and you equally want to contribute and you want to define those rights, how the property will be shared in your future property, right? It doesn't just have to deal with what you have. It could deal with what's going to happen as a result of what you anticipate will happen, right? And then obviously, you don't intend to, you want to be prepared for the breakdown, even though you're not hoping for it, right? So that's the one aspect. And we get it, it's not the most romantic conversations, but in the long run, when you talk about cost and contention, like there's nothing that could bring you more peace of mind than having a marriage contract, in my opinion. But I think in most people's opinion who actually have a marriage contract and experience a breakdown, that it's more seamless and it's certainly more defined.
No one's shocked. You know what your obligations are. And I think on that note, I want to add that if you like the default of what the law is right now, if what you would like to see happen is to have all of your property divided always based on the law, you can have a marriage contract that says that. So if God forbid, your relationship breaks down, then there's no argument about what you intended. It's clear we intended, this is what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that I shared in every property and whatever. So it's the opportunity for you to set the tone. So I think we've given you enough examples, and I think it's clear enough that we think you should have a marriage. It's almost like we're telling you must have one. Okay. So here are the next steps you should take. You could reach out to us. We can help. This is not one area that we think you should do it yourself. Talk to any family law lawyer, please, if you're not, within our jurisdiction, and you have a relationship with another family law lawyer. Do talk to someone, because the number of times as well that we've seen agreements that are unenforceable, it's kind of heartbreaking. So Shin, you wanted to add something? Yeah.
No, just the whole do it yourself. Like marriage contracts are one of those contracts you definitely don't want to do it yourself. You want to go to an experienced family lawyer, and you want the other spouse to get the benefit of also receiving advice, and you want a properly drafted agreement that's comprehensive and clear.
You want someone that knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. I've seen many different plethoras of agreements from not Home Depot, from Law Depot, where this like software or this lawyer who doesn't practice family law, and you could tell. And these kinds of agreements that lack clarity and are non, when they add terms that are non-enforceable in general, are very problematic. And you don't want to have to take something like that to chance. You want something that's clear, you want something that's concise, and you want both parties to have the benefit of actually getting legal advice before signing it.
Talk to an experienced family law lawyer, and you can do this at any point in your relationship, whether you're about to get married, you're just moving in together, or if you've lived together for several years. So that's why, again, in Ontario we just call them marriage contracts. It's not prenup, postnup. Just you could get these, or a cohabitation agreement for those that are choosing to not get married. So speak with a lawyer. Get again, be financially clear, or be fully transparent to the best of your ability. Make sure the other side gets independent legal advice. And if you do have a marriage contract and you think it does not reflect what you want anymore, there's always an opportunity for you to go back and have it amended and review it and all of that. So anyway, long answer long. Should you have get a marriage contract, please, please, please do get one. It's one of the best investments. After I dare to say, in some cases, this might even serve you more than your insurance policies. So if we're making that analogy, think about that and get one done. Okay. All right, guys. Bye for now.